Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my podcast series titled Finding My Way, a memoir by Jerry Morton. This is podcast 77, Raise the Hood. Podcast 77, Raise the Hood, is an account of obtaining a used Ford Falcon to drive back and forth between our Tennessee home and the university. The car had a manual transmission that took me a while to master. The Falcon taught me a lot about maintaining your vehicle. Podcast 77, Raise the Hood. All the details for leaving my position as a school psychologist in St. Petersburg, Florida, to become a graduate student in the University of Tennessee Psychology Department were coming together nicely. That summer, the summer of 1971, we found a house that was affordable just 3 miles from the high school where Anna would be teaching French and English. The cost of the house was $2,000 down, plus assuming the previous owner's VA loan. Living in the house allowed me to qualify for in-state tuition. Our next-door neighbors agreed to provide daycare services to our 9-month-old daughter and 3-year-old son. The GI monthly educational reimbursement was greater than I had imagined. The immediate problem facing us was transportation. We were a single-car family. Our home was in South Knox County, a rural area without public transportation. I needed a cheap car to get back and forth to the university. Our luck seemed to be holding out. We found an old Ford Falcon, advertised in the St. Petersburg Times for just $300. As far as I was concerned, the only problem with the 2-door car was the stick shift. I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. I remembered failing the Army's truck driver's part of the qualification process. I didn't know how to shift gears then and had not improved my skills at the time we purchased the Falcon. By the time we left Florida for Tennessee, I had mastered the task. Well, it is more honest to say that I could get from here to there without stalling out more than once or twice a trip. During the first year of graduate school, my skills in driving a stick-shift car greatly improved as the condition of the clutch deteriorated. Yes, we replaced the clutch. Fortunately, our next-door neighbor was a backyard auto mechanic. He taught me how to change the Falcon's spark plugs, change the points, and change the oil. When other things went wrong with the car, Lester knew what the problem was. If it was a simple problem, he would guide me in fixing it. If it was beyond my ability to fix, he would tell me what I could expect a professional mechanic to tell me and how much it should cost. Since something was always going wrong with the Falcon, Lester and I got to know each other fairly well. As I stated, something was always going wrong with the Falcon. From the brakes to the steering to the wheel struts to the muffler, so that at times, the car ran problem-free for a stretch of a week or two. Those were good times. When the car was pulled into our friendly mechanic's gas station, the time the transmission gears welded together, the mechanic asked me, with a degree of hurt in his voice, Couldn't you tell by the sounds it was making that something bad was wrong? I honestly replied, Well, It's constantly making strange noises. Another strange sound was nothing new to me. It wasn't until the car, it just started bucking, and then it just stopped, just right there on the 4-lane highway. Then I realized there it was really a bad problem. The problem was that the oil pan plug or some kind of plug had fallen out so that the transmission fluid drained onto the highway. Without the transmission fluid, the gears just got so hot that they literally welded themselves together. By now, you have deduced that I really didn't know much about cars. I mean, I was a good driver. I just had not acquired the basic knowledge concerning car care expected of me by professional mechanics. Fortunately, I didn't have a problem with the car's air conditioning. The car didn't have an air conditioner. After completing my doctorate program and working a few years as a doctoral level school psychologist, driving the Falcon was getting old. During that time, I learned how precise and delicate a car was. Setting the points in the spark plug gaps had to be exact, or the car's functioning would be in doubt. That seemed to be true for all of the other functioning elements. The last straw came one hot afternoon as I was driving down the hill towards our house. About a block from our driveway, the car started jerking and then the engine quit. I pushed in the clutch and let it silently continue its roll down the hill and coasted into the driveway, braking it to a stop at the end of the pavement. I took the key out of the ignition switch and walked into the house announcing that the Falcon had died. Depression overwhelmed me as I thought of getting the car towed one more time, getting someone with the time to work on it, and getting one more repair bill just to keep it running for a few more weeks. It was time for a new second-hand car. The Falcon just sat at the end of the driveway. I intended to get it fixed, but was in no hurry to do so. I had 2 functioning cars now. The Bird, the Falcon, had done its job. It had been my transportation to and from the university for those 2 critical years. Months passed into years with the Falcon sitting at the end of the driveway. It wasn't totally useless. Every fall, I would buy a bushel of apples and slice them up. Then I'd place the slices on the level space between the back seat and the rear window. The interior of the car kept the insects off of the apple slices as they dried. The dried apples made great snacks and nice toppings on desserts. The dashboard was an excellent place to dry green beans. Dried, the locals called them leather britches. Soaking them in water and then slowly cooking them for several hours was considered to be a delicacy by many. I wasn't one of those people. The yellow paint on the car dimmed as the years went by. When the wasps built their nest in the cracks of the doors, we stopped trying to open them. All 4 tires had flattened during the passing years. At some point, the car's body passed from being a novelty to suggesting that it was detracting from the attractiveness of our home. Hints began to be made that it might be worthwhile to pay someone to haul it away. The kids had grown from being preschoolers to being late elementary school students, as the Falcon slowly settled closer to the asphalt of our driveway. One lazy summer day around that time, our two kids and a neighbor's child decided to have a children's garage sale. They gathered all of their old toys, made a big sign to attach to a stick, and planted it in the front yard. I was sitting in the living room rocking chair, reading a magazine that late afternoon, when the kids burst into the door. "Daddy, Daddy, a man wants to buy one of our old cars. He stopped and looked at our toys and then walked over to the driveway. He wanted to know if we would sell him one of the old cars." "Well, we only have one old car. That's the Falcon. The olds is what Mom drives. I don't think the Volvo's that old." Actually, the Oldsmobile looked a little bad. One might even say it looked awful. I mean, it ran great. We loved the old gray Ghost, except most of the gray paint had been replaced by the rusty red undercoating. You see, as we have already discussed, in those early years when we lived outside of St. Petersburg, Florida, I didn't know much about the care of cars. Anna and I heard everyone say that the salt in the air from the ocean was hard on a car's finish. Above all, you did not want to get seawater sprayed on your car. If that happened, you hosed the car down as soon as you could, or it would start rusting. The 2 years we lived in Florida, the gray Ghost never started rusting. Just to test out that old saying, we would drive the car out on the beach during big storms coming in off of the Gulf and let the salt spray blow over the car. Then we watched it for the next week or so to see if it would start to rust. It never did. Well, the rust showed up big time after a few years had passed. Funny how it takes so long to learn some simple things. As the kids were going on about the man in the driveway, the doorbell rang. I answered it. Standing before me was a man of about 50 with a big smile on his face. "How much do you want for that old Falcon?" Thinking how I didn't want to sell it, and it might be nice for our son to work on it when he turned 16, I replied, "It doesn't run. It's got a lot of problems." "Oh, that's okay. What do you want for it?" "Well, it's a piece of junk right now. I was thinking of having it taken to a scrapyard." "I know what you mean. Well, I won't charge you for coming to get it and towing it off your hands. What do you want for it?" We had recently talked about what an eyesore it was. I must be some sort of a hoarder or something. My guess was that it would cost us at least $75 to get it towed off. "I'll take $75 for it." How about 50, as I'll have to get a trailer to tow it in, blow up the tires if they'll hold air. You'll have $50 and won't have to pay $75 to get it towed." Okay. He paid in cash, saying, "I'll come by Saturday morning with a trailer to load it on if that's okay with you." "Yeah, that'll be fine." We shook hands, and he left. The kids were excited, and I think Anna was pleased to finally have the old wreck gone. I had mixed feelings. That car had a lot of history for me. I really did fantasize about fixing it up. Darn, I'd never do it. I knew that. Still, I kind of wished I hadn't sold it. Saturday morning, and there he was, backing up his low-to-the-ground trailer onto the driveway after having me pull the other two cars out of the way. He had his teenage son with him. I guess the Falcon, my Falcon, was going to be his son's car. The man was probably a pretty good mechanic. He had the skills and tools needed to keep the car in shape. They pulled out a big pressurized air container and blew up the tires. I didn't know there was such a pressurizer. All 4 tires became fully inflated again. I had thought you'd have to buy brand new tires. Those 4 old flat things would never hold air. Once again, I had things to learn about cars. These 2 really knew what they were doing. The man opened up the hood as the teenagers knocked out the wasp nests in the cracks of the doors. "Hey!" he shouted at me. "Did you know that a spark plug wire was off one of the spark plugs?" Oh no! That was why it died on me coming down the hill. The spark plug wire must have been loose and fell off the spark plug as I was approaching the house. I never opened the hood. After coasting into the driveway and parking the car, I never opened the hood to see if I could tell what was wrong. Years went by and I never opened the hood. I was depressed. I just sold my car, a fully functional car. I just sold my fully functional car for $50. I was definitely depressed. Taking the car keys from me, he directed his son to go to his pickup truck and get a battery. He had a brand new car battery. He installed it in the Falcon. Sitting in the driver's seat, he inserted the keys into the starter and turned the switch. The car was clearly trying to start. He turned off the key and got out of the car. "Hey, I got an idea," the man declared, looking straight at me. "You got any motor oil?" I don't think so," my state of depression allowed me to say. "Sure you do. You use it for that lawnmower," he said, pointing at the lawnmower behind the open garage door. "Let me look," came my reply. I didn't want to give him a can of motor oil to use on my car he bought for $50. "Here's an open can. About a third of it is gone," I said, handing it to him. "Thanks." He takes the can of oil and climbs into the engine of the car. He just climbs into the open hooded area and places his feet on either side of the 4-cylinder engine block and pours the quart of oil into the carburetor. He just pours it into the opening as he jiggles the carburetor flap. It doesn't move. He's pretty strong and he puts a lot of force into the effort, but it doesn't bulge. I experience a small sense of satisfaction observing that desperate act. Turning to his son, he commands, "Give me that ball peen hammer out of the toolbox." The boy brings it to him. Grasping it with both hands, he swings the head of the hammer down into the carburetor flap once, twice, 3 or more times until it moves. Reaching down with his fingers, he grasped that flap and moved it back and forth as if it had never been stuck. My mouth is open. I have never seen such brutality inflicted on a delicate car engine, a car engine that took me hours to delicately set the gaps in the points and spark plugs. This just couldn't be happening. I was in shock. Climbing out of the engine block, the guy approaches me as he says, "You got a can of gasoline?" Oh, no. Now he wants me to give him the gas to drive off with my car that he paid $50 to own. I sold him my perfectly functioning car for $50 because I was too lazy to open the hood. No, I don't think I do. Yes, you do. Check that gas can over there, the one you use for the lawnmower. I slumped over to the gas can he identified and picked it up. It's full. As I hand it to him, he grins and nods and says, "Thanks." He pours the gas into the tank, jumps into the driver's seat, and turns the key. On the first turn of the key, the car roars into action. Black smoke billows out of the tailpipe. He jumps out of the car, slams the hood shut, directs his son to pull the trailer out of the way, and shouts to me, "Have to run to the gas station. Thanks a lot." With that, he backs the car off and roars up the hill driving my car that he paid $50 for because I didn't raise the hood. Remember, raise the hood at the first sign of car trouble.